If you're learning Spanish a lo boricua because you come to Puerto Rico often to visit or because you live here, this series will be the greatest series that ever was or will be for you. We're starting a new series in year 2 of our podcast, Learn Practical Spanish a lo Boricua. I'm essentially compiling all of the doubts, insecurities, questions, and frustrations I had year 1 in basic interactions, in stores, at hair appointments, at restaurants, and clarifying all those and giving you guys the confidence that I didn't have in year 1 in those situations. And we kicked off the series with an essential episode of ordering in a restaurant a lo boricua. In the previous episode, Alfredo and I had a conversation about everything that you're going to hear and need to say that we could come up with from the moment you walk into the restaurant at the hostess stand until the moment you pay. If you're a little bit more beginner, it'll help for you to start with this episode and then go back and listen to episode 42 of him and I doing this all in Spanish. You need Alfredo as your reference for what native speakers are going to sound like in these situations. In my experience with students who are prepping for travel, they focus way too much on the phrases they're going to say and not enough at all on the fact that someone's going to respond to you. And if you can't understand jack shit about what they're saying, then the communication failed. Alfredo is your marker for what these are going to sound like out of the mouth of a native speaker. The speed, how run together it might sound. You've got a native speaker here helping you tune your ear to what these phrases will sound like live in these situations. We'll be going over the vocab and the phrases that you need to use and the ones you're commonly going to be hearing from your host to your waiter, and etc. And here's the key for today's episode. What your host or waiter or waitress will be saying will be in white. The responses, the phrases that you're going to use will be in yellow. Let's start at the hostess stand. Of course, they're going to greet you normal, buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. ¿Cuántos son? They might ask right off, how many are in your party? How many of there are you? Especially if it's a bigger group and they can't quickly count. They're going to probably start with that question, okay? ¿Cuántos son? That means how many? How many of there are you? How many are in your party? You could respond with somos cinco. Using somos with the number is how you'd say there is this number of us. It's not a direct translation. Spanish uses the verb ser, to be. We are 5. That's what it literally means in Spanish. But translating for its use, it's like saying there's 5 of us. Okay, somos cinco. What about if you were going to say there's 7 of us? What would that sound like? Somos siete. Correcto. Muy bien. You could also answer with una mesa para and the number of people that are in your party. Una mesa para cinco. How would it be there for if it was going to be a table for 7? Let's hear it. Una mesa para 7. Muy bien. Una mesa para 7 personas. Muy bien. Okay. Here's what you'll hear from the host or hostess. Here are some potential responses. If your group is a bit smaller and they can already count, there's just 2 of you standing in front of them, then instead of saying, how many of there are you? They might just say, una mesa para dos. They're using their observatory skills to see there's 2 people in front of them. They're going to ask a table for 2. Hi, welcome, table for 2. Okay. En ese caso, in that case, you can just confirm, sí, para dos, right? And both of these in Puerto Rico might sound like una mesa para dos, sí, para dos, right? That S being dropped. Yes, for 2. If you're going to confirm, then you just say yes and confirm the number of people. If you need to negate and say, no, there's still somebody missing, there's actually going to be this many, you can use no sería para 3 personas. No, sería para 3. ¿Una mesa para 2? No, sería para 3. Nuestro amigo está de camino. ¿Una mesa para 2? No, sería para 3. Nuestro amigo está de camino. A potential more information you can give you'd like. You can just say, no, sería para 3. No, it's going to be 3 of us, actually, okay? You can stop with that. Just like you can stop with that in English. You want to give a little bit more? Our friend's on the way. Well, nos falta alguien. We're missing someone. We've got one more person. That's another phrase you could throw in there. You can choose to give more context if you want to do more speaking, want to build up that confidence of continuing to open up your mouth and yes, produce the language. Feel free to add more context. Of course, you can just say, no sería para the number of people that you have and not go into details if you don't want to. I'm just giving you some more context for some things you could say, okay? In the episode, we talked about if there's a wait. A wait in Spanish is una espera. In Puerto Rico, right? Specifically because we're going to drop that S. So una espera, una espera. Okay. Si hay una espera, they might go ahead and tell you right away how long the wait will be. Hay una espera de 30 minutos por una mesa. They might just start with hay una espera. You could ask cuánto tiempo más o menos, you know, how much time more or less. Or they might go ahead and straight up tell you, hay una espera de 30 minutos por una mesa. There's a wait, a 30-minute wait for a table. At which point, of course, they're going to see if you want to, if you're willing to wait, like any other restaurant situation, right? So they're going to ask that usually with, ¿quieren apuntarse? ¿Quieren apuntarse? Apuntarse is to sign up or to put one's name down on a list, okay? Apuntarse, to note something, sign up, to put one's name down, because it can have all of those meanings, right? They're going to confirm whether you'd like to be put on the waiting list. Quieren apuntarse. At which point, they might ask you for el nombre. They're definitely going to ask you for el nombre, and potentially even el número de teléfono. Número de teléfono, your phone number. That's in the case that their waiting area, they don't have a very good waiting area. If they're expecting you to be outside of the restaurant and they don't have one of those little beeper things, they might send you a message when your table's ready, okay, or give you a call. So what I brought up in the episode, if you have a complicated name for Spanish speakers, one that's not very common in Spanish, and especially if you don't pronounce it in Spanish either, if you just say, okay, el nombre, Mackenzie, they'll be like, huh, pero de qué? I've gotten better. It's taken about 4 years, truly, for me to get better at saying my name as Kerry when I introduce myself. It is weird when you've had an entire lifetime of only saying your name one way to then pronounce it in a different way. But when I do it, I get better results. People can hear that it's a rolled R, Kerry. And so then I spell it and it's easy. If I go like Carrie and the person's not confident in English, then they already feel like they don't know. I've had people that just hand me the paper when I do that, okay? So you might need to pronounce your name slightly differently to help them out. And you definitely, if it's a complicated name that's not common in Spanish, you should know how to spell it, okay? You shouldn't have to be going through the whole alphabet in order to find the letter you need. Practice spelling your name if you have a complicated name, por favor. That's very important. I've had to do it. I'm just speaking from experience. Kerry, K-E-R-R-Y, K-E-R-R, I go double R, Y. You should also be able to give your phone number without having to go through all of the numbers 1 through 10. Okay, wait, hold on, I have a 7. Hold on. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and then 4. 1, 2, 4. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because you were just being lazy. You're listening to this video and I told you that you should practice freaking being able to give your phone number in Spanish. You decided not to do it, so that you're making somebody else suffer as you go through the numbers sequentially 1 through 10 to try to figure out the 10 numbers of your phone number. Don't do that. Practice saying your phone number in Spanish. You should be able to do it. It's a great way to practice your numbers as well. I just kind of altered my phone number here, down here. This is, don't call this person. This is probably a number. Don't call them. 402 650 9096. A lot of times in Spanish, you're going to hear numbers given like that, where they don't do all 402 650 9096. They might say like 402 650 9096. So practice some different combinations of your number. Be able to give your phone number quickly without having to go through the numbers from 1 to 10 in order to be able to do so. Let's say your table's ready and it's time to go. The host or hostess might say, sígame por favor, okay? Follow me, please. And they'll seat you at your table. They'll say, ya pronto su mesero o mesera estará con ustedes, okay? So soon your waiter or waitress will be with you. Estará con ustedes. Important for you to recognize the phrases that are being said to you. Listen to Alfredo in the previous episode for the most authentic Puerto Rican pronunciation. Ya pronto su mesero estará con ustedes. Since the pandemic, I think this is the case maybe worldwide, that it's becoming more common to scan a QR code for the menu. So that'll often be there at your table. You can go ahead, and I said you can puedes seguir verificando, I said in the episode, so you can go ahead and start checking out the menu, maybe seeing some things that you'd like, any questions that you might have. When the waiter comes to your table, they're going to do what they would do in English. Hello, welcome, and introduce themselves. Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches, familia. Especially you'll use that if it's a group of you. It looks like a family. Mi nombre es, and I wanted to go over this. Alfredo used mi nombre es fulanito, fulanita, algo así. In Spanish, this is not just Puerto Rico, pero sí se usa mucho acá. Fulano and fulana is like the way of saying somebody's name without actually naming somebody. So it's like saying, hi, I'm John Smith, just a common name. Hi, I'm Bob. So they use fulano and fulana as without specifically naming somebody, as in kind of name a person. Mi nombre es fulano, fulana, right? They'll give you their name there. And yo les voy a servir en la tarde de hoy. I'm going to serve you guys this evening. That might, in English, we might say something more like, I'll be your server tonight, but you'll hear some version of this. They're going to be introducing themselves. Try to remember their name. That's a nice thing to do and create a little bit more confianza con el mesero, la mesera, if you know their name. Okay. And as it typically goes in restaurants in the United States, then they'll start off by taking your drink order. What's that going to sound like? It'll sound something like, ¿Quieren empezar con alguna bebida? Do you want to start with a drink, alguna bebida? ¿Quieren empezar con alguna bebida? Maybe they'll say, ¿desean algo para tomar? ¿Desean algo para tomar? Would you like something to drink? Les traigo algo para tomar. Can I bring you guys something to drink? ¿Quieren empezar con alguna bebida? Would you like to start with a drink? ¿Desean algo para tomar? Would you like something to drink? Les traigo algo para tomar. Can I bring you something to drink? Your keywords here is you're looking for bebida, you're looking for something para tomar. That's how you know that they're asking you for your drink order. We wanted to go over the vocab for the drinks that you're going to hear here often in Puerto Rico. Okay, un refresco is a soda. Of course, if you are referring to a specific one, they use Coca-Cola, Sprite, etc. They use, they use the brands, of course, like we do as well. Pepsi, they just try to pronounce it in Spanish. You might just want water. So you could ask for agua embotellada. You could ask for bottled water, agua embotellada. Or you could ask for a bottle of water. Okay, una botella de agua. Una botella de agua. Okay. Alternately, you could get tap water, which Alfredo mentioned. There's not really a phrase for tap water. Yesterday, we were at the restaurant. The waiter said, agua de la casa, like the house water, like the house wine, as in probably from the tap. So in that case, you can specify there, un vaso de agua might be the way to do that. Agua de la casa, if they ask you that, they're implying the same thing. Instead of it being bottled water, they're giving you tap water, okay? Un vaso de agua. You'll find los cócteles, which are cocktails, or tragos, which is like saying mixed drinks on the menu. Las cervezas are beers. El vino is wine. And something else that, you have your different jugo, limonada, etc. Your jugos naturales de fruta, different fruit juices that they have. But one that we wanted to point out was that in Puerto Rico, for orange juice, they say jugo de China, jugo de China. That's believed to be because they imported oranges from China and the crates used to have China printed on them. So that became the namesake of the type of drink, jugo de China. Okay, if you're in a breakfast or brunch situation, you might be looking for that. Okay, let's say your waitress is now at the table. She's gotten your drink order. She's brought them back. She will probably ask, ¿Ya están listos para ordenar? ¿Ya están listos para ordenar? Are you guys ready to order? If you need a little bit more time, remember your responses are going to be in yellow here. What you're hearing from your waiter, waitress, or hostess is in white. You can use any of these phrases. You want to start with, ¿Nos puedes dar unos minutos más, por favor? ¿Nos puedes dar unos minutos más, por favor? Can you give us a few more minutes, please? Right? Or un minuto más, por favor. One more minute, please. You could say it like that. If you want to keep it a little bit shorter, that's certainly fine. Un minuto más, por favor. Unos minutos más. Few more minutes, por favor. These are some other ones that Alfredo gave again, just for context. Todavía no estoy seguro. Todavía no estoy segura. If you're a woman. I'm still not sure. Todavía estoy indeciso. I'm still undecided, indeciso, indecisa, etc. Todavía no sé lo que quiero. I still don't know what I want. It's just giving you some other phrases that you can practice that you can throw in there if you'd like to. But essentially, the most important thing is that you ask for a few more minutes. Puede decir, ¿ya están listos para ordenar? Creo que necesitamos unos minutos más. I think we need a couple more minutes. The essential phrase is asking for more time. Unos minutos más. What I just said was, I think we need more time, right? Creo que necesitamos unos minutos más. ¿Nos puedes dar unos minutos más? Could you give us more time? Now, notice that we're using nos puedes dar unos minutos más. Tutea a tu mesero o mesera. Tutear is the verb in Spanish that means to talk to somebody in tú instead of usted. Okay, tutea a tu mesero. Speak to them using tú. I mentioned this in the podcast. I had talked to Kelly, who's been on this podcast. I asked her when I was here once by myself about if I should be using usted or tú with a waiter, or how do I create a more polite tone with my waiter, because I think that's very important and that's who I am in English. And she said the way to do that is by using tú. You create more confianza. You put yourself kind of at the same level of the person by using tú. Okay. I know that the whole thing is hard if you're a native English speaker. Wrapping your head around the subtleties between usted and tú is not easy, and it's not easy long term. But here you'll just vas a ir entendiendo poco a poco. You're going to be learning little by little, understanding little by little the different situations that merit tú and usted. And here's an example. When you're in the restaurant, use tú with el mesero and mesera. That's how you create a more friendly tone. The most important slide, perhaps, how to order. We're going to give you some options here. Same ones we went over in the podcast. You can use me puedes traer. Me puedes traer is, could you bring me this thing? La pasta, el pollo, los camarones, algo así. Okay, you're following it with your order. Just like you would say, I'll have the chicken. You're not just going to say, I'll have chicken, because there might be a couple of options with chicken. So the blah, blah, blah. You can also use tráeme. Tráeme, por favor. Bring me, please, the blah, 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 blah. That's not rude to say. And also, as I mentioned, right after this section, your tone says a lot. So if you look at them, you're like, tráeme esto. Yeah, that sounds rude. Tráeme, por favor, el pollo, o la blah, blah. In your tone, you create that politeness that you're looking for. Okay. One that I typically use, and I feel like I hear most often, is a mí me das. Okay. It's literally, to me, you'll give me the this. Doesn't sound anything like what we should be saying in English, but it's kind of like saying, I'll have the blah, blah, blah. I'll have the me das el, la, los, la. Alfredo brought up, you can just use yo quiero el, whatever it could be. Y para mí is especially when others are at the table and have already ordered and it comes around to you, it's very natural in that case to just say, para mí, el blah, blah. She's gone this one, she's gotten this order, she's gotten this one, she comes around to you, para mí, and this and that and the other. Okay, take a look at these. We're going to practice with this menu from a restaurant in Ponce. All right, so I would like you to ask for el filete de bacalao using one of these. Okay. La mesera vuelve a la mesa, te dice, ¿ya están listos para ordenar? Sí, ahora sí. Yes, finally we're ready. Ahora sí. Ask for the filete de bacalao. Let's hear it. Muy bien. A mí me das el filete de bacalao, por favor. ¿Me puedes traer el filete de bacalao? Good. Okay, now I want you to order the ensalada tropical. Yo quiero la ensalada tropical. Para mí, la ensalada tropical. A mí me das la ensalada tropical, por favor. Any of those. Find which one. You'll end up gravitating towards one naturally, and you stick with this. My most common one is para mí, or a mí me das. Let's talk about how to ask for something you need, something that you're missing. Ketchup, napkins, bottle of water, whatever it may be. En Puerto Rico, puedes alzar la mano para llamar al mesero o a la mesera. I talked about this in the episode. Something that I've noticed here that we don't do in the States is that it's very common here to lift up your hand and call the mesero as they're walking around. Just lift up, and I try to give this specific graphic with one finger pointed up because it usually will end up being like, I like this. You're not like waving to them. You're not like going like this, literally being like, come here. It's just a little, hey, getting their attention. Okay. Just a quick little lift of the hand. And that's used very often here. It's not rude to do that. If you see them walking by, trying to get their attention, lift up your hand. Okay. You might hear them say, ya mismito voy por ahí. Ya mismito voy por ahí. Not a direct translation, but this means I'll be right there. Okay. Ya mismito voy por ahí. Okay. Gracias. No hay problema. No te preocupes. Okay, no worries. All good. Okay. Alfredo said, muchas veces, most of the times they're going to come by the table and say, after you've called their attention, sí, buena, dígame, dígame. And not a direct translation into English, but it's basically where the waiter in English would say, it's what can I get for you? You need something? Can I grab something for you? Something along those ways. It's literally saying, hi, yes, hi, tell me. That's what it is in Spanish. Yes, hi, tell me. This phrase will look familiar. Me puedes traer. Can you bring me? ¿Me puedes traer servilleta, por favor? Can we get some napkins? Could you bring me some napkins? Of course, that doesn't sound super nice in English, but it's not all rude in Spanish, so I'm translating it for tone. Could we get some napkins? That's kind of the feel of it. What I mentioned in the podcast as well is that, of course, in this situation that you've already flagged down your waiter, they know that you need something. They come by, sí, buenas, dígame, sí, una servilleta, por favor. You could also just say, yeah, a couple napkins, please, like we would in English. Think about all these things. You might say, yeah, could you bring me some napkins? You get a chance, or you might just say, yeah, some ketchup. You know, you have some flexibility. The communication is not rigid. So it might be that in the case that they already know that you're asking for something, you could just throw out the item you need. Sí, ketchup, por favor, mayo ketchup, cuando puedas. I do that a lot. Cuando puedas, when you can. Again, that's just who I am. I try to treat the person who's serving me with respect and understand that they have a lot of other things going on. What if you want to change some ingredient for another one? For example, puedo cambiar el pollo por salmón. Let's say you have a salad option and you're wanting to know if instead of it being a chicken Caesar, you could get salmon on the salad. Okay, it's going to sound like puedo cambiar el blank por blank. You use por for exchanges. Okay, so can I change this for that? Puedo cambiar blank por the other ingredient. Sounds like, could I trade the chicken for salmon? Can I do salmon instead of chicken, etc.? We went over all of this vocab in the episode, and I made Alfredo do the pronouncing for this, so you should listen to him. But I wanted to go over these basic things that you're going to need in a restaurant and you're going to see on the menu. Una servilleta is a napkin. Los cubiertos son silverware. Un tenedor is fork. Una cuchara is spoon. Un cuchillo is knife. Un vaso is a cup. Una copa does not mean a cup. It's actually what's used usually for a glass of wine. These are false friends here. Un vaso y una copa. Una copa de vino. If you want to ask for something on the side, aparte is going to be your most important word. So el aderezo aparte. Ponme el aderezo aparte. Put the dressing on the side for me. O si me puedes dar el aderezo aparte. Can you give me the dressing on the side? Me puedes dar el aderezo aparte, etc. Keyword here being aparte, when you want something that would normally be part of the dish on the side. We usually think of this with salsas, things like that. Salsas and dressings. Aperitivos are the appetizers. Aperitivo, aperitivo. Acompañantes are your sides. So if you get filet mignon, they're going to ask you what kind of sides would you like with the dish. So we've got acompañantes. Papas majadas or mashed potatoes. Batatas in Puerto Rico are how you say sweet potato. Papitas or papa frita or French fries. Arroz manposteado. Mi favorito. Arroz manposteado is the best rice ever. That's why to find that. Amarillos, sweet plantain. Arroz blanco con habichuelas. White rice with beans, and mofongo. There is no translation for mofongo. You just have to, you got to come to PR and eat some mofongo if you've not experienced that yet. What are the kind of phrases you're going to hear when the waiter checks on you, when they walk by your table to see how everything is, if you need anything, etc.? Commonly, you'll hear, sí, buena, todo bien por aquí. Sí, buena, todo bien por aquí. Not a direct translation. It's like how your waiter would say, how's everything? How's it going? Do you need anything, etc.? They're just checking in on you. Todo bien por aquí. all good over here, basically like what it's directly translating to. They might just say todo bien. That's in Mexican restaurants I've been to back in the States. I remember that was the most common way. Todo bien? All good? Need anything? Just quick little check-in. Okay. Some of the responses you can use for this, for todo bien por aquí, todo bien. Sí, todo muy bien. Yes, everything's great. Okay. Everything's going well. Bien, right? They might ask you, ¿está buena la comida? Is the food all right? Is the food good? Couple options that Alfredo gave. He said, sí, muy rico todo. Muy rico todo. Okay. Everything is delicious. We're using rico here because we're talking about todo, everything. I'm not referring specifically to la ensalada, el filete, el bacalao. He's saying everything, todo. So we describe that with a masculine adjective, rico. Todo muy rico. Or you could say muy buena la comida. Here we're using buena because we're referring to la comida. That's why we made it feminine. Sí, muy buena, gracias. Okay, sí, muy rico todo, muy buena la comida, muy buena gracias. And finally, when it's time to get the bill, again, el gesto que normalmente se usa, the gesture that's usually used, is as if you're signing a check in the air. Okay, el gesto que normalmente se usa es como si estuvieras firmando un cheque en el aire. It's what Alfredo said. He described it perfectly in the podcast when you didn't have a visual piece. Now you have a visual piece. Often, Alfredo will get their attention and go like this. Okay, you take your little pointer finger and your thumb as if you're signing and in the air, and they will then get the hit. If you want to communicate across the restaurant from them, you can do that. You get their attention with your hand, and then you make the little signing gesture in the air, they'll bring you la cuenta. If they come by the table and ask you, then you can instead use your words, which would be la cuenta por favor, or la cuenta cuando puedas, is what I mentioned earlier. When you're asking for something, I like to throw in, yes, when you can, could you grab us some napkins? Some napkins when you can. The cuando puedas is saying when you can. La cuenta cuando puedas, la cuenta por favor. As I talked about in the episode, muchas veces te traen la máquina a la mesa y puedes añadir la propina allí mismito en la máquina. Okay, so normally they bring the check to your table and you can add the tip right there on the machine. If you like, you swipe your card, etc. You sign all right there at the table. That's how it works a lot of times, not always. Sometimes they'll give you the bill just like they would in the States, then they'll take it back, they'll swipe it, they'll bring you to add the tip and sign and all of that. And you'll get some different variations, but very commonly they bring the machine to the table. Want to make sure you guys know the word la propina. Propina is tip. And finally, if you're in a walk-up type of a place, think of a food truck, a little kiosk, a place in the mall. It's a different kind of language, very informal. In those places, it's much more common to just use dame. Dame, give me. I know it sounds hard for our English-speaking brain, but that's it. Dame el filete de bacalao. Dame el pollo. Dame la pechuga rellena, con arroz manposteado. Sí, yeah, y pagas y ya, and you pay, and that's it. If you know that you need to practice this kind of vocab and these phrases, then I highly recommend you sign up for our Patreon page, patreon.com/Spanish with Carrie. That gives you access to the transcripts of these episodes, as well as the Quizlet decks that we are creating for all of the episodes we've done. But for this series, especially of the vocab that you're going to be hearing, the phrases you're going to be hearing, the vocab that you need to be using in these different situations in practical Spanish a lo boricua. Restaurants, gas station, in a store, getting your hair cut, getting your nails done at the barbershop, etc. If you didn't take the most amazing notes for this whole class and you don't have time to do all of that, then sign up for the Patreon. It's $5 a month, and there you'll have a Quizlet ready-made with everything that I went over today so that you can practice and feel confident about the vocab and the phrases you're going to be using and you're going to be hearing in these situations. As always, keep up with me on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube at Spanish with Carrie. And thanks so much for watching.